Hi, everybody. Welcome to Ramblemancy. Um, Thanks for being here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about video gaming. And joining us tonight, we have once again returning Mr. Jonathan Boyle, our very own resident bard. Um, Hello, voguing for the camera again. And
Glad to be here and bring a sense of vogue to the conversation.
yeah, we also have joining us for the first time in a while, Bri. Welcome.
Thank you. It has been a while, but it's been
Yeah,
fun.
I was thinking about this actually earlier today. Like, what was the last time you were on besides the charity stream?
Borderlands.
Yeah,
Oh, besides the trailer, we did Borderlands
right.
twice, and then there was
yeah.
a Rambleman. I don't know. I don't think was it the first Ramblemancy that was a guest. I was a guest on, like not
It
the
might
first
have been.
Ramblemancy, but the
I
first
think it was. I think it might
guested
have been. Yeah.
Ramblemancy. I think I was the first one.
I mean, like we had John on Ramblemancy before, but only
Yeah.
but voice only, because that was back
Right.
when we had the janky computer that like
Yep.
hated when we tried to bring in anybody over like
Oh.
video.
Mhm.
Those were
So
the days.
yeah,
A solid
good.
percentage of my appearance on like non-Dreamwell Chronicles content has just been as a disembodied like dulcet ghost.
Yeah.
True. The only times you've been on my streams is when you're causing chaos in Neverwinter. So
It's funny.
Last time
It's so
go ahead.
funny to me because like I wasn't there for most of that one time. Like I wasn't in the stream for most of that time. But I did tune in at the exact moment that John made everything go to shit. And then
oh no, oh guys, what did I do? What did I do? And every other place is like, what did he do? And we're like, oh no, there are level 80 monsters attacking our keep.
Yep.
Uh-oh.
That will go
We're
down.
gonna die.
That moment will go down in Brigade history as just one of the most delightfully chaotic moments.
Oh, so good. It was very good.
It was so much fun.
Well, thank you, Matt, for clipping John voguing. That's much appreciated.
Fastest clipping finger in the West.
Yeah, fastest clipping finger in the West. Well, before we get started, I just want to say, hello, Geekouts, Matt. Hello, Karaoke Night 69, welcome. Jolly Old Obnixilis, I saw Derpenduin, Nico, welcome. Gemini Lightning, hello. Good to see you here. Hype indeed. We are going to be talking about some video gaming. Now, last time we had this conversation, we had a bit of a caveat beforehand, and I think it still stands here, that we're going to try to like get a little deeper into the conversations about video games than just sort of like listing our favorites. So for all of us here, as well as you in the chat, it's perfectly fine to bring up your favorite video game, but we're going to try to avoid the chaotic jumping around that is going to happen if we just list our favorite games and just like say random stuff about them. So, in as much as possible, let's try to keep the discussion still rambly. That's totally fine, but we're I think it's a good idea to have the discussion be a bit more a bit deeper.
Mhm.
So, to start us off, I'm going to do something that nobody saw coming because I'm going to throw Freeman under the bus. Freeman, what you got for us?
I was so ready. I was so
know.
ready to
I know you
to
were.
rant.
Oh no, we know.
No, I made such a mistake in telling you, Freeman, that I was ready to go.
Uh-huh. Oh, this is every once in a blue moon, right?
Mm-hmm.
This has only happened one other time.
That's right. Yeah.
The first time, well, I cannot recall what I said, but it was quite. I'm sure it was quite insightful. This is probably the second time. Maybe it was insightful. I don't know.
Somewhere
it
deep in
usually
the
is.
annals of history.
Well, video games have always I don't know, have had different purposes. And for me, I think I've said this, and it goes without saying that they have there's a certain amount of I don't want to say escapism,
Mm-hmm. Well,
but
I mean,
there's a certain amount of getting away for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes the whole day, or night, as the case may be, that you just need to become this this other identity.
Yeah.
With a set of skills. For me, it's a sneaky archer every
Mhm.
time.
Always.
And I know not all games have sneaky archers, but the stealthy
The
character for
archetype,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I mean, like I think that's important, right? The idea, like, because like, even if it's not purely escapism, I think there's there's the element of, like, for me, like I've mentioned many times, it's the need to, like, turn the brain off. Like sometimes it's the only thing that'll work, for me. Um, but yeah, like like it's not always just escapism, I think. But you're absolutely right. There's that element of, like, getting away in whatever capacity that looks like.
And I think I actually kind of overdid it myself some months ago. I haven't actually played any video games for
You burn yourself out on
video
Skyrim.
Skyrim, zombies, and Call of Duty zombies to be specific. Yeah, I think I did a little bit because it was like the first thing was the easiest thing to do. It was like, okay, quarantine time. All right, what activities? Okay, this is the easiest one. I want to shoot zombies, or I want to go and be a sneaky character. Oh wait, I want to try something different this time. I want to be a orc fighter because those mechanics always were like, they always whoop my ass in Skyrim. I cannot play a character in Skyrim that is like right up there in the front. So I tried a different character, but I definitely burnt myself out from doing all those options. And now it's been a few months, and I'm like, I need some video game like recommendations from y'all at some point later because yeah.
I have a list.
And I need a better computer. So
Yeah,
it's not gonna happen yet.
that's one we need to work on.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
Like
I
my
think
kind of games. I got all the recommendations for you.
Mhm. Sweet.
yeah, you need any recommendations for like wholesome, kind of calming, chill games? Bree's your
That-
girl.
I know all. I got it.
Bree is your girl
that'd be
for
awesome.
that.
Awesome. Yeah, for Xbox too, because I have an Xbox. That's what I have right now.
Mhm.
So
There should be. I can ask my roommate. He only has an Xbox, so. But I'm sure the big ones are all on the different things.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me look at. Oh, hello, Amethyst Cat Lady. I didn't see you come in. Hello.
I'm sorry. I was silently laughing at Snarcher.
I didn't see that. Oh my
Excellent. Yes, the Snarcher.
Come up, and I was like, everyone's in this beautiful like rendition of something. I can't bring up Snarcher right now.
No, I'm just like I'm thinking of like TV show Archer and just referring to him as at like anytime he's sneaking as Snarcher.
Mhm.
Oh my god. Wait. It's funny. Was it Karaoke Night that said that?
Yeah.
It's really funny because Karaoke Night literally plays a Snarcher
Oh my
in our
God,
D&D
you're right.
game. So
You're right,
I'm
she
outing
does.
you, Karaoke Night.
Snarcher.
The Snarcher.
Well,
Oh gosh. Does that mean it's now officially time to rename her in the group chat?
Yeah, actually, I think it's time to rename her
Okay.
in the group chat after this episode. I know
guess.
several of the other people that are in that game are watching, so like if you do it, I
Oh,
reward you a
Jolly
GM
old Nicholas has
inspiration.
got us. Excellent. Gemini Lightning says, I have been going through Neverwinter again and having a blast playing as a tank barbarian. Nice. Tank barb is great. I think I've only played barbarian in that game once, but I don't know, something about, usually that's my brand, like the swing big stick until everything stops moving. That's what I do in games because I'm not smart enough to play anything other than DPS. But like but for whatever reason I couldn't get out of like the in Neverwinter, the class that I felt have gotten the farthest with is Ranger. For some reason that's the class that I just connected with in that game. I don't know what that's about. But yeah, like relatable. Yeah. Well, listen, my MMOs have like this started back in like World of Warcraft, where like I just didn't understand what was going on. I didn't want to be yelled at for not tanking hard enough and not healing well. So DPS, that's what I got.
Yeah.
You just mash
like-
buttons until things die. So
have the wildest spectrum, I think, of things that I play, because I will oscillate wildly between like, hello, I'm going to sit way back here and throw heals at you, to like, I'm going to sit back here and push a button, like a series of buttons in a very complicated sequence in the hopes that I can see like a very large red number on top of the boss.
Yeah.
That little dopamine hit every time in playing Guild Wars 2, that I would spin in a circle with a greatsword and just watch the damage numbers spin up really, really fast.
Right.
Like, that's the entire reason that I played Guardian.
Not to mention the fact that, like, for me personally with ADHD, concentrating on tanking well or healing well while also focusing on not standing in the red circles, it's too much to ask. Okay, that is just too much. You cannot expect me to do... I can attempt to do both of them, but I will do neither well, will be the result of that. So, I thought Nico had a good question here, which is story versus gameplay. What is more important to you in a video game, and why? Ooh.
I'll just story. Personally, if you couldn't tell by the games that I played, not that the gameplay is bad or anything, but most of them are very focused on story. And there's only some games that I play that have specific gameplay mechanics that aren't based in story, or that are just that are more complicated, and I'm bad at them. So, watching me play Ori in the Blind Forest, while very entertaining, is extremely hard for me. And Nico, there's a reason I haven't played it again.
That was the meanest joke I have ever seen
So
your mods
mean!
play on you.
So mean!
Wait, I'm out of the loop. What happened?
Nico, I was about to finish the stream, and I was like, okay, I finished this battle, I got this thing, I think I'm just gonna pause until wait to get out of this tree. And Nico's like, you're almost done with the tree. You're so close to being done with the tree. All I have to do is go back down and press a button. And I was like, fine. So I went back down and pressed a button, and immediately everything flooded, and I had to run for my life. And I was like, Nico, you're dead.
You're dead to me.
Dead to me. I was going to finish this stream, god damn it.
Unmodded, banned from the channel.
That's amazing.
It was a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, story is definitely a lot more important for me, because I play a lot of like harvest games, like and a lot of those are kind of just like mind numbing, but also like the story is always so wholesome, and I just want to feel good that I'm actually contributing to the world in some way. So I think I care. I just Matt's rendition of what happened.
Yeah, I was reading that. Yep.
Yeah. So that's my answer.
Yeah, John.
See, for me, I'm like, I feel like I fall solidly in a middle ground here. At least right now, I do. This hasn't always been true of me. I think for a long time, I was very much like, I want the mechanics of this game to feel really good, and if it has a great story, that makes the game even better for me. But I'm like kind of somewhere in a middle ground now, where I think one of the most satisfying things, it depends on what mood I'm in. If I want to like sit and listen to like Critical Role or Dimension 20 or like a podcast or something like that, or just listen to music, then playing a game that's like mechanics heavy but story light, or like hang out on Discord and play games alongside friends, like playing something that's very mechanics intensive but like kind of story light is kind of like my satisfying gameplay experience. But if I'm more in a mood for like a good story, or I see Hades mentioned in the chat, which is
I saw that too.
a great middle ground of those two things, because the story is great, the voice acting is amazing, the music is so pretty.
Yeah. I'm sorry,
so games like that.
I'm laughing at Karaoke Night 69's answer, which is I played Guild Wars for like 2 years at 6 frames per second. If that doesn't answer the question of story versus mechanics, I don't know what will. I feel you, because when I started playing, was it Heart of Thorns? I think it was Heart of Thorns when that came out. My computer could not handle that place, so I feel you. Like I struggled with that.
I had a decent computer for 2000 whenever that came out, and it still kind of chugged in the verdant brink. So,
Freeman. Thoughts on
Yeah.
narrative versus gameplay or versus mechanics?
It's got to be a little bit of both, right? Because there's times where I want the story, and I look for a story to follow because I love stories, and that's a big reason why I love playing D&D
Mm-hmm.
and tabletop games in general is the story. But then there's times where I just want to like race. I want to like drive a fast car
Yep.
in like GTA or something, and just to like tune out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I had to say it's a little bit of both, depending on the mood or what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, Hail of a Wolf, thanks for so much for resubscribing for 2 months. Happy 2 months.
Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. I'm gonna go ahead before I get to my answer, because I have a feeling that my answer might lead me into a bit of a rant. So I'm gonna address chat first.
Mhm.
But Gemini Lightning says, as someone whose favorite titles are actually turn-based and not rely on APM at all, plot is everything. Civ 6, Darkest Dungeon, Stellaris, XCOM 2. When I want to take a break from those, I play other ones. RTS is also fun, meaning the only one I don't really care for is FPS games. Yeah. So okay, I'm glad. I'm glad I chose to read your thing first because that kind of leads me into what I was gonna say, which is I'm sort of in the same boat as like John and Freeman. I tend to lean um, more narrative, but some of the best games I've ever played, some of my favorite games of all time, are the ones where the mechanics and the story lift each other up. And I think
Mhm.
those are some of the ones that are some of the better games that I've played. But I think Gemini Lightning's point about FPSs is actually really interesting because I remember a time when the main game type for storytelling for narrative was the first person shooter, right? Like not that long ago, it was like, oh gosh, maybe like late 90s, early 2000s, that era of gaming, the main mode of like storytelling, like the primary game type for telling narrative games was the first person shooter because it's what we
Yeah.
had, it's what we knew. We hadn't
Mhm.
really gone outside of that too much. I mean, there were others, not to say that they didn't exist. It's just that that's where like the popular games, their narratives were tied up in the FPS genre. I think the last one of those that we really got, the last big major title of those that we got was Half-Life 2, which was not to say that first person shooters haven't had stories since then. It's just that they haven't been focused there. They haven't been focused on the narrative side of things. They've been
Yeah.
much more mechanical. Um and
Yeah, shooters
yeah.
have sort of like verged off into this massively multiplayer competitive
Yeah.
like arena style shooter. I think is mostly what people like associate that with at this point.
Yeah. Well, and like and even ones that aren't really that, like Destiny 2 for example. That's definitely a first person shooter, but and it's not like like a competitive arena thing unless you choose to participate in those things, which I did and hated every second of it. But uh I am very vocal about my dislike for PvP in most games. But anyway, um but like Destiny 2 is not a game that I would say is high in narrative. It has a lot of lore, but and the lore is interesting, but it's not a particularly narrative game. Like there is a story, but you have to look really hard to find it. You could absolutely
That's
play that
yeah.
game without ever engaging with any kind of narrative elements whatsoever, which
Hmm.
I have
Yeah.
done because I was very overwhelmed and confused while playing the game, but it felt good is the thing. That's what hooked me to
Mhm.
that game is that the mechanics felt good. The gameplay
Mhm.
felt good.
Yeah. That's why I played Overwatch.
Mhm.
Um, that's like it's a very the way you're describing it is very similar to my experience with Overwatch. Is I played Overwatch because my friends had it and I wanted to play with them, but I mean the reason I got into it was because I liked the lore and because of that stuff. But the reason I kept playing it was because it was fun to see how balance changed a lot, and nowadays I think that's kind of more annoying just with the amount of characters, but over time, like in the beginning, it was really fun to see like the balance between characters change, as well as everyone had such different abilities and such different mechanics. It was really fun to figure out what worked well for you,
Yeah.
and I think that's really good in Overwatch's favor. But at this but the reason I still say story over mechanics is because I got bored of Overwatch, and I have never gotten bored of a story-based game before. So
Yeah.
There's only so many times that you can push little cart before like pushing little cart, even like no matter how many like different characters you're playing while you're pushing the cart
Yeah.
are like starts to get stale.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and I think.
And
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, one of the things that I think that games like Overwatch and games like it do really well is offering like a variety of power fantasies, which is something we've kind of been talking about a little bit. Like we've been talking around a whole bunch so far in terms of like what people like want and like to play, how they like to feel when they're playing games. And I think there's a lot of like Overwatch, especially like I felt like when I was playing it early on, like it felt like there were a lot of different power fantasies at play that you could use so you could find something that you liked to do, and it would put you on a path to being able to do it. Also, yes, it is the cabbage cart.
It is 100% a cabbage cart. It's not called a payload, it's called a cabbage cart, and that's what it will be from now on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Please inform Blizzard.
Also, Nico, yes, to answer your question, yeah, I remember you saying this about how after it went free to play, they kind of in Destiny 2, they kind of made the story part sort of very background and like made people work to find it. Basically, I remember you telling me about that. And so yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it was like prior to that, which is unfortunate. But yeah, like I don't know. I think. Gosh, I was gonna make another point about all of this, which was to the point of like I have to the counter example, and I think people may disagree with me here, which is totally fine. But I thought that one of the reasons why I will say that Mass Effect 3 is one of my favorite of the titles and just game in general, which I'm currently replaying through again right now. But one of the things that I love about it is the fact that you don't have the David Cage game syndrome, right? Where you've got like Detroit Become Human and those, where it's basically a walking simulator. It's like push button to continue the story, right?
Yeah.
You don't. It's not that. It's not that kind of narrative experience, but it's also not the purely mechanical gameplay side. They found a way of merging the two in Mass Effect 3 better than I think that they did in any of the other games, Andromeda included, because Andromeda is like mostly about the gameplay, not very much about the story. And I think that's one of the things that I loved about Mass Effect 3 is that they did probably the best in any game that I've seen, that I've played, of pulling together those two elements and making them work together, the narrative and the gameplay side of it. And I think that was something that they did really well, and I'd love to see in more games. But I don't know. I also know that they like worked their asses off on that one, and frankly, at a certain point, it's not, and it's unfortunate, but it becomes less profitable to do that kind of thing for a game company. So like,
yeah, for sure. There is something to be said that going like the point and click event, like not the point and click adventure, but like walking simulator with choices. Some of them are like very good and they're very successful, and but there's also like, since it's just so story based, since there's not a lot of variation, that can also easily be something, if the story like can easily be something that you get bored with. So like,
right.
I think it's very important to have both, because it can be a really amazing story, but if you're in the mindset of like, this is a video game, like I'm not watching like, if I was watching a TV show of this story, that would be great. I could just sit here and do something else, but I have to focus on being able to push these buttons at a certain time.
Yeah.
And it gets kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
And like, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy that genre of game from time to time, especially when I'm like much more in the mindset of needing like a more narrative experience.
Right. Yeah.
Like certainly I enjoy that from time to time, but I would hesitate when like in the strictest definition calling it a game sometimes, because some of them, the worst versions of them are ones where like you the player is sort of there as a token element and not as like in any way. Like I think the best example, or the best analogy comes from Yahtzee from Zero Punctuation, saying that like you'd get the same experience watching putting on a movie and pressing the pause button every once in a while, and like pausing and unpausing it every once in a while, and like.
I can see that. There's definitely, I'd say that those types of games would be like I know that some of those games are like very cool because they have so many different, like depending on the choices you make, so many different endings, like
Right.
with Detroit Become Human, and that's like the pull of Detroit Become Human.
Yes.
And I think that's very cool. But I've also seen that like Netflix does like sort of that thing with TV shows that they create.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
like, does it have to be a $60 game?
Yeah. Yeah. And like that's for me that's the draw. So like what you just said about like the various endings and like the different choices affecting stuff, like that would be the draw for me for those. But like, so I guess to answer the question, really, like for me it's just a matter, it comes down to however I'm feeling in that moment. So I guess
Yeah.
much more like what Freeman said, I think.
Yeah.
Which is just kind of, it's whatever I happen to be in the mood for in that moment. But like
Yeah.
in general, I think more in the direction of like narrative is where I would default to. But yeah.
Same. Yeah.
I think the games that do that most successfully are able in some way to tie like the mechanical side of like the input and reward like cycle, like from a designer's standpoint of the actual gameplay mechanics to the story. And so like you feel like you are doing something besides pressing E to advance the to the next chapter of the story.
Yeah.
Right. And whereas like with early, like we were talking about, you know, shooters in the early 2000s and stuff like Halo, where like the story kind of just happened around you while you were shooting aliens. You know, I think the ones that in many ways are most successful at doing that are the ones that can take that story and then attach it to something that you, the player, are doing without making it, without distracting you too much from that. So, which is it's a fine line to ride.
Yeah. This is a sort of along the lines of story, but I've been thinking that like in terms of like walking simulator with choices, I do play a lot of those, but not in like the Detroit Become Human way. I just play a lot of walking simulators that you just kind of live your life, and like the story happens around you, but you have kind of like a chore list that you have to do. One of my favorites is it's called East Shade. It is a walking simulator that you're kind of thrust into. And you're a painter and you're exploring this island and you take commissions, and it's sort of like a fantasy, and all of the characters are animals. And so if you didn't know a game that's perfect for me, that's perfect for me. But it's like it's not like there's no conflict or anything. You're just kind of like walking around and talking to people. And you kind of just discover this world that you're going through. And I think that's, for me, the best type of narrative games is there is gameplay aspects, like you have to get money to buy this thing, and there's like some puzzles and stuff, but like a lot of it has to just do with you just walk around and talk to people and be nice to people, and you find cool stuff, and that's it. And you just discover the world.
Well, that's funny that you say that, because like I recently was, and I think I posted about it in our media club discussion channel in Discord, but I was recently playing Elite Dangerous, which is basically like there's basically no narrative in that game. It's all gameplay. But the thing that I think is interesting about the way that game does it is it's kind of like the experience that you're describing a little bit, Bri. I would say significantly less wholesome, but much more in the like self-insert into life, into like alternate life kind of thing, right? Where you are essentially put directly into the role of a person not a person experiencing a story, but a person living a life in another in another world, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right? Where in the case of Elite Dangerous, it's an explorer of space, somebody who is either exploring space or mining, shipping, basically space trucker simulator, bounty hunting, right? Or any combination therein. And so it's kind of this bizarre experience where, for me anyway, it was a bizarre experience where I found myself playing a game whose controls and like gameplay felt good. There was no narrative, and weirdly I felt myself even more drawn in that way, and I'm not really sure how to like reconcile that in my mind.
I don't know. It definitely has that like the fact that it's self-insert, the fact that it's like you're this person and it's sort of like an RPG, but without any stakes.
Exactly.
You're just
yes
in it, and you're just like, because like that's why like when you like read a story or like watch a show or something and you like love the universe, like I just want to be in that universe. I just want to be there and discover things. I don't want to fight things. I don't want to like go on some magnificent quest. I don't want to be the main character. That sounds horrible. I just want to live in that world because it sounds so cool. And I think that's sort of like what it's kind of like those types of games are about. You're just like, I just kind of want to be there.
Yeah.
I get that, and I kind of think that's a style of game I'm not accustomed to that I would love to know more of, because most games that I've played and a lot of us have played, you're always playing the hero or the main, the main person,
Mm-hmm.
and you already have like these, I don't know, you have these abilities maybe, or you're just superhuman or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just playing a character that does exploring, like Astroneer, I think is kind of like a little bit. You're playing like, and I think John is muted or.
Oh no, I was
He was just really quiet.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Astroneer is an example. I've watched you guys play that, and that's one of those games where you're not necessarily like the center of the conflict or what have you.
Yeah.
I have.
Oh, what were you gonna say, John?
Oh, I have one comment about that, and it's a game that I've been playing recently, and I know that Bree's been playing recently too, in terms of like just being there and kind of like exploring this kind of limited world, but like diving simulators like Abzu and Beyond Blue, I think are such a good example, because like if you think about the game mechanics of something like Abzu, you do exactly, you can swim faster, and you can scan fish, and that's like basically the entirety of the game mechanics of Abzu, or I mean Beyond Blue, but
and Abzu, to be fair.
Too. I haven't played that one yet.
Pretty much all diving simulators.
Yeah, but like one of my favorite things, one of my favorite places to go visit as a person are like aquariums, and I really enjoy like snorkeling and scuba diving, and that game just like so well captures that experience of being lost in this big blue expanse that's so very like foreign to you, that like it doesn't really matter to me so much that there's not a lot mechanically going on, and like in the grand scheme of things, not a ton narratively going on, because like the experience of doing this thing and is so well captured that like that experience is the gameplay experience, right?
Yeah, I fully agree with that, because with Beyond Blue, like I like because I mean in Beyond Blue there is a narrative, and but they insert it like very small portions, and it's not a huge narrative. It kind of like pulls on your heartstrings a little bit, but the best part about that game is just swimming around and finding all of the animals that you can find, and like being like scanning the dolphins, being like, here's all the dolphins that I see. And like the best part of that game, because this is part of the story, but like you follow this like family of sperm whales, and that's all the game is about, really. And you just follow the sperm whales and hope that they're healthy, and you're just wandering around the ocean, and it's so fun. And I think like my favorite part of last stream that I did, which was on Thursday, is Beyond Blue, is I spent like 40 minutes looking for one fish, because I missed one fish on my roster. I spent 40 minutes looking for it, and I went on this whole rant, and we're just chatting in my stream, and I finally found it. Like, granted, it was a giant squid. I didn't know that at the time, but it was a giant squid that I'd missed. But it was so rewarding just to like swim around, look at everything, and then you find the giant squid that has nothing to do with the story, because I finished the story. I was just looking for this squid, and it was so fun.
I wanted to.
I
wanted to go back and revisit some things that chat was saying. First of all, Hail of a Wolf. I am not entirely sure. I am reasonably certain that nobody here on screen has actually played The Last of Us 2. But so
I don't have a PS4, and it's an exclusive, right? I'm considering watching like a playthrough of it just to experience it, because it seems really cool.
But if you have, as Nico pointed out, if you have non-spoilery things that you want to say about it, because I do know that there is some like discourse happening right now, feel free to bring it up. I am curious. But I also wanted to point out that Nico had a good question, which is how important is player creativity to you in video games? And then he goes on to further explain, as in how much can your playthrough vary from other people's playthroughs? And then let's say, for example, Minecraft as a game with basically unlimited player creativity versus something like Tetris that has very little creativity to it and it's more about getting good with the few mechanics that it has. I will start because I actually have been thinking about this specific thing recently. And my answer is going to sound kind of like a cop-out, but it's true. And that is that it depends on the game, on what type of game we're talking about. Because if it's a game like an MMO, for example, then it's very, very important to me that my play experience differs from everybody else's. Is hugely important because otherwise it just feels like kind of a sham because a lot of
repetitive and
yeah, and a lot of the marketing, not marketing, but a lot of the appeal of a lot of MMOs, intended appeal, is that it in some ways it's kind of like Bri, what we were talking about a second ago, which is that it's a world and you're a character in that world.
Yeah.
It's just so happens that you may be a more heroic character on their own heroic journey in that world, but you are a character in a world. And if my experience is exactly the same as somebody else's, then that illusion is shattered for me, and then I have like zero interest in continuing. So
yeah,
in that type of game, it's very important for me. Like character customization, it matters to me if I can make my character look unique. Right, that matters. Things like that. Those sorts of things are important to me. But in other games, like there are games where that kind of creativity is simply not part of the premise to begin with, and so in those cases it doesn't bother me because I know in a lot of cases people have the same experience because it's designed. So it really depends on the game. But I would say generally speaking, my answer is that it is very important.
When it comes to like story games, especially story games that are very railroaded, I even see that people's gameplay is varied because it's like you can't, it's like either your gameplay is varied or your opinions varied or whatever. It really varies from person to person. Like if you're watching, I don't know, for me, like if you're watching a playthrough of someone playing like just like a very simple walking simulator and they like go from person to person and you played that walking simulator before and you're like, oh, I didn't even talk to that person, or I missed that person, or they missed this person that I talked to. Like it doesn't change the gameplay so much, but it's like, oh, they missed this part of the world that I saw, and it's impossible to like get everything in a game unless you are spending hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours in it, even like small games.
Yeah.
Like I'm sure I've missed so many things in games that I've played on stream because it would just not be fun if I would spend 30 hours in a 10-hour game.
Yeah.
So like the way the way people play games is always going to be different for me, and so I don't really have too much of an issue with it.
And I just want to address Geek Out's question, which is, does it have to really be unique, Lucas, or the illusion of uniqueness? That is a good question because for me the answer is it has to be a pretty convincing illusion of uniqueness, because I think on some level games being limited in the way that they are, everybody on some level is going to have very similar experiences. But as long as the illusion of a unique experience is there, I'm happy. So
yeah, same.
Yeah.
And that's one of those things again that like kind of falls on the developer side, because like if we use Guild Wars 2 as an example, like Thief does bunches of damage and Guardian does bunches of damage, and like if you're boiling it
Thief
down
does
to
bunches of damage unless it's me playing Thief, and then I can't fucking do it, John.
That dodge key is certainly something. But like the way in which they do it is pretty different, or at least it feels very different to do. And so like having that feeling that your gameplay experience is different as the Guardian from the person playing the Thief in the party, I think is important to that. So
yeah, for sure.
I'll say also that my answer to that question is more or less kind of like Lucas's. In the games where there's like near infinite player creativity, it does matter a lot to me in those games. I have like a couple of 1,000 hours in an action RPG called Path of Exile, which is like if you took Diablo and then introduced all of the deck building possibility of Magic the Gathering. And so like tinkering with all of the little pieces to like make my character perform in exactly the way I want it to, when the end result is both that I and everyone else in the game are smashing bunches of monsters at once, is an important part of the gameplay experience to me. But we've sort of hashed the it's less important in the walking simulator like narrative style games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a?
Yeah, I've played a lot of Skyrim, as y'all know. And so I'm going to say this and take it with a grain of salt, because some y'all have not played Skyrim yet, or have not played it as much, and have not played the same character a dozen times. I have played the sneaky character in every way I could possibly imagine.
The Snarcher.
Sorry. But you know what? Not every sneaky character was good at archery. I
Fair.
thought, okay, what if it's a sneaky character who's like good with the dagger and really good at like talking his or her way out? Because I do have a sneaky female drow. What if she's really good at talking her way out of things? With it, and then I played another one who's like really good at pickpocketing and really good at speaking. So like he's just hella rich, and so like, but does not do anything in the main quest because they can't do damage. So it doesn't really work for Skyrim, but it was fun to do anyway, and just ignore the main quest altogether.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what my answer is to the question, however, because I just don't have a lot of like video games under my belt.
That's fair. Yeah, but like that makes sense. That's interesting though. That sometimes something about what you said about the idea of a character that you have a freedom to the level which you can create a character that is actually actively bad for playing the game.
Absolutely.
That's cool. Like that's really cool.
That's fun.
Because like I did, yeah, exactly. It's like, ooh, I want to just do all these. I could do all the side quests, all of them, and never touch the main quest, and still get like a bunch of cool story stuff. Yeah, I think.
I did. By the way, Amethyst Cat Lady, I did see Vertiman's question about the Stanley Parable, which I don't know. Vertiman, did you have something specific that you wanted to bring up about the Stanley Parable?
I think he was. He asked more or less if we had played or knew of the Stanley Parable, and that's when we were talking about like walking simulators and like player choice, which I think, from what I know about the Stanley Parable, is there's just like a zillion different endings to it. There's like a bunch of different ways to make your way out of the game, and like the path through it changes based on all of the choices that you make, and so does like the narrator's kind of both increasing levels of exasperation with you, the protagonist, that they are trying to narrate through their very specific story. Because I've only ever seen like I think Gina DeVivo playing it on, or maybe it was Amy Dallin on stream. I think it was
probably Amy.
Yeah, it was Amy.
Gina doesn't stream very often.
Yeah, no, Amy doesn't.
Yeah, it was Amy Dallin.
I think she streamed like twice by herself.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was Amy Dallin and Sam Delev, but no question related, just very different. Yeah, so I haven't played it, so I don't have enough experience with it, but it does seem like a very interesting, like it seems like a game where the journey to any of those ends matters almost as much as the various ends that you are trying to achieve.
This is sort of a tangent, but because I don't know what the Stanley Parable is, but you said like the narrator plays a very big part in it. Okay, this is a tangent. This is because I just brought this up, and is sort of related, but
Ramblemancy.
Have you guys? Yeah, I know. Have you guys ever heard of the game? Oh, crap! Now I've forgotten it. I had it 2 seconds ago. It's in my Steam wish. It's in my Steam. I got it. Give me a second.
All right.
You guys continue talking about something else. I'll bring it up in a second.
And then there was the sneaky character that couldn't swim. And I really thought I had difficulty with that character.
It is very important sometimes to jump in a river to get away from a wolf that's chasing, like a wolf that's chasing you, and you're at 1 HP and you don't have any cheese wheels left to eat in your inventory. So,
indeed,
okay, I've got it.
Okay.
Sorry, but it's called Stories: The Path of Destinies, and it has a very big. I found out about it because it was on Game Engine. Or back when it was not Game Engine, back when it was after like back to school or whatever. It had like a school theme to it. I don't know why. It had Erica and Iffy on it at the time. But I heard about it. It's basically it's a story game, but you can jump around the story. And the narrator is extremely important because the narrator says pretty much almost exactly the same things, but not quite. And it varies depending on what part of the story you play first. And you can always go back and play the story differently later based on something you find out in a different part of the story. It's really cool. It also features all animal characters, but
there it is.
There it is. That's what drew me in. But like it's I guess it's hard to describe. It just reminded me because it has very narrative focused stuff, and I think it kind of gives the illusion of mechanics, but the mechanics is more your own puzzle solving, really, because you do fight enemies and you get powers and abilities from it, but it's really more of like, can you piece together the story so you don't make the wrong decision, basically? And you're like supposed to make the wrong decision, and like the character like dies in a whole bunch of different ways, and you learn from that, and then the character comes back and he's so confused, and he's like, what is happening? Maybe that didn't really happen. Okay, I'll go do this instead. And you play through it until you get all of the right things in succession. It's really interesting. Anyways.
So do you get the experience where, like, depending on how you play through the game, the narrator will say the same thing, but it's got a different context, and so it means something different now? Or
it says like sometimes it's like a different context, or it's like you're doing this and this and this, but you have this, but like there's this feeling of that thing is fucking evil. You don't know how, but you do know how because you just realized that you got killed by it last time, and you're like, but he like, it's the same things, but it's like adds something or adds a different thing or adds a different thing based on what you know. It's really cool.
I want to acknowledge what Nico said, because the reason he brought up the question of player creativity was, I brought up player creativity for specific reason because there is a genre of games that excels at exactly that, but is sadly not as popular as it deserves to be. That genre is fighting games. Interesting. I'm curious. Okay, I would like to hear you expand on that. I'm very curious now. But while we're waiting for Nico to type out an answer, I had this is kind of going back to the idea of like gameplay and narrative. I'm not really sure what point I'm planning on making with this, but I think it's just a really cool game experience that I had, and that was really interesting, that combined both game mechanics and story. Now, I am going to qualify this and say that if you have not played Arkham Asylum and care about spoilers, this may be an issue. So I'm going to give you that right now. But in Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham Asylum, there's a sequence with with Scarecrow where periodically he'll just show up, and it's more a situation where you have to pay attention to your environment and like environmental factors to know that you have basically been poisoned with his fear gas, where like you'll hear Batman coughing from time to time as you're wandering around, or you'll see like weird shit happening at the peripheral of your vision and stuff like that. But eventually it becomes very obvious, and you get into this sort of mini game-ish sort of sequence where you're in this metaphorical sort of like platformer, basically, where you're in Batman's mind and you're wandering around. But there's a particular instance. So the game starts out with a cutscene where you, Batman, have Joker, the Joker in the Batmobile, and you're driving to Arkham, and you get there and you pull him out, and there's this whole sequence where you walk with him into the place, because as Batman you're like, this was too easy. I'm suspicious, so I'm going to stick around and see what he's got planned, right? And then that's when the whole game kicks off. In this sequence, it's very interesting because you are you're playing this sequence with the fear toxin, and at a certain point, you essentially like things get really weird, and you're fighting, and I think you. Actually, let me try to remember exactly. It's been a few months since I actually played through this. So, but at some point, basically, you start playing through that, like, it plays that cutscene again, right? And except it's Joker driving the Batmobile, and Batman is tied up in the passenger seat. And you come in, and you're basically playing as Joker, walking in with Batman into the asylum, in the complete reversal. And then there's a moment where you're back in Batman's perspective, and it tells you to, like, because Joker's aiming a weapon at you, and it tells you to, like, do something in order to dodge or counter, and you do it, but it doesn't matter because you get shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sends you to the game over screen. You're like, wait, what did I do wrong? Right? And it tells you to reload. But when you reload, it is a totally different part of the game. It is not reloading it's just the continuation of the game. And it's just this weird thing where it takes the meta mechanics of the game and it incorporates them into the actual story of the game, which I've never seen happen anywhere else.
So cool.
Where, like, it makes you think that you died in game and that you're reloading a save, but that's just part of you, like, still continuing to play the game. And it's really wild. The first time I went through that, it was just this mind-blowing experience of, like, what the hell was that? And I had to pause and, like, sit there and, like, and just sort of absorb what had just happened, because it was just completely unexpected. But yeah, I don't know.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
really cool.
one of the thing that video games like have to do, because you don't have the sensory experiences of the character that you're playing and stuff like that, is like give you little tells, like sound cues and visual cues and stuff like that. And so there's a fourth wall, obviously, in video games in some ways, but there's almost like a bridge there too, between like the game and what's happening in front of you and you out here, so that you can interact with it. And that sounds like a really interesting way of kind of messing with that. Like it's like sort of the unreliable narrator trope that you find in stuff in writing, in like long and short form narrative that's been translated mechanically into a video game. I think it's really, really neat. Like it's cool when people take really creative advantage of that bridge between player and game. Because it's one of the things that makes video games unique, right? Is that there's this, they have to like kind of build a bridge between you and what's going on.
Right, and it's essentially, in many ways, it's basically utilizing the medium of video game as one of the many narrative tools in their arsenal. You know, as a way of, and it's basically a way of taking something that doesn't exist in the game to be symbolic of something happening in the game, and I think that's a really interesting thing. It's something that I do a lot in running tabletop games. I can't get specific at this point in time, mostly because that's not where my head is at the moment. And even if it was, I doubt that I'd be able to pull out like a concrete example. But that's definitely something that you do. Like right when there's a disconnect between the medium and the audience, and you want to bridge that gap, sometimes you have to use tools that don't exist within the confines of the story that you're telling in order to like bridge that gap. And I think that's very, very interesting. And I know there are other games that do that. I just have not played them myself. But yeah, that was, I think, maybe one of my favorite examples of something like that happening.
Cypher's system for insights is a really good example of that. I think I can spend 2 points out of my intellect pool and ask the GM for some piece of information that my character could feasibly have, right? Yeah. And it's because like my characters in the story, they're standing in the room and I'm not, and they would see something that presumably I'm not, because I'm not in. I have to construct this entire scenario in my head.
There are even like, sorry about Cypher tangent. There are even abilities that let you do that. My Cyberpunk Cypher character has a few of those. That's the reason that I know, because there's like one that's basically like you can ask pretty much like anything about anything, and depending on the level of the question, it'll cost you blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But you just can't ask any questions about the future. And so it's like it gives you like a rules of like how you can ask your questions, and it's like you can ask the DM these specific things, or like in like you can't ask anything of the future, and then here's levels of questions that you can ask, and it's very cool. It's a cool thing about Cypher.
I want to go back because I saw some cool stuff. Gemini Lightning talking about the Fade in Dragon Age, which is super cool, and I want to get into that. But also, Nico came in with the fighting games thing, which was fighting games is the epitome of player creativity. With an average roster size of 12 to 16 fighters, most fighting games have at least one, if not multiple, characters that will be interesting to you, either for their design, playstyle, or backstory. Add to that the fact that, depending on the fighting game, you have up to 2 assists and obviously matchups against the rest of the roster, and you end up with millions of different ways any given fight can play out. Okay. I see that. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that is really interesting. I will admit, that is a genre of game that I've never been particularly drawn to, but that is really cool. The idea of those various combinations that you can kind of change your experience based on little choices that you make. And those are that's kind of like what we're talking about right now, is the meta choices, right? Meta mechanics in a way that influence the way the game plays out.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, with a game like Path of Exile or Diablo, a lot of the metagame choices that you make that involve that high level of player creativity are choices that you make before you do things, right? I'm going to play a big man with an axe who yells very loudly and hits the ground, and that's how he kills monsters. And then you build towards that. Whereas you're like, I'm playing in a fighting game, it's more like I'm playing this character, and here are their strengths and weaknesses and their moveset. And there's a lot of like split second. There's some that's before, right, where you're deciding on like what character you're going to play or what characters you like, how they feel. And then there's some that's like in the game where you're making like these split second mechanical decisions about how am I going to deal with this thing that they're doing, how am I going to deal with this like rapidly evolving situation in front of me. And I think that's one of the big draws of fighting games, is that in spite of like, it seems some, like, I think even from the outside, to be like a very limited scene, because you have, fighting games in, you have your little thing, your window, you have 2 health bars and 2 characters, and like the background, which is usually just set dressing. But that's because all of the important action is in these split second decisions that the players are making. And that's something that I know only a little bit, because I have a few friends who are very, very into Smash. And they talk about that stuff all the time, so I'm just kind of tangential to that. But
right. I want to say, Gemini Lightning brings up, in terms of like Dream Realms, the Fade, and particularly in Dragon Age Origins, one of the best levels ever made. I can see it from a design perspective, Gemini, but I will also say that is possibly one of my least favorite sequences in that whole game. But it's mostly because attention span reasons. But yeah, no, I can see that for sure. And I think I know what I think I've played enough of Dragon Age Inquisition to know what you're talking about how they bring it back there. And I did think that was kind of cool. But yeah, I do like the way that I find it fascinating the way that different games bring in like dream sequences, or just altered mind states sequences and things like that, because every game has a different approach, right? Like you've got the Fade, which does it with interesting level design and with like symbolic stuff, because it's a dream realm, and so everything is kind of symbols and archetypes, right? And then you've got the Arkham Asylum sequence that I was just talking about, and oh gosh, there was another one I was just about to mention. I don't remember what it was. Like immediately gone. But I think that I always find that really fascinating, the way that different video games accomplish that same thing with like what we were just talking about, like the meta tells that are like, here's how you know that you are in a dreamscape or in an altered mind state or things like that. I always think it's so interesting, and I find those sorts of things really fascinating. I don't know. I mean, those sequences in games, I find those are some of my favorites more often than not.
It's interesting because like there's a certain feeling to dreams and nightmares that they have, when we experience them normally. But like the way that games choose to alter the experience of interacting with the game to kind of simulate that feeling of a dreamscape is always really like it's always really interesting to me how they choose to do that. I know a lot of horror games in particular are ones that do that.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a game that I've played that had a dream sequence, and I cannot.
The ones that come to mind for me are, I think, mostly horror games. Dead Space is the one that I've played that has some pretty terrifying nightmare sequences. Yeah, I think Dead Space 2 is actually I think Dead Space 2 actually starts with a nightmare sequence and then has several like nightmare sequences throughout it. And boy, is that extremely unsettling.
Yeah, I will say that there are some games like that. The instances where in a game those sorts of nightmare or dream sequence things are not enjoyable to me are the ones where they just seem where they're kind of just there because somebody decided, oh, this would be a good thing to have, or where they are badly translated from another medium, right? Where it's like where it like a dream sequence being done in a game the same way that you would do it in a movie, it doesn't translate. It just doesn't. And the example that I have for this is actually also Mass Effect 3. There are several sequences throughout that game where usually after there's like a major death or something like that, one of the unavoidable ones, where or just at like important key moments in the story where you are Shepard running around in these like dark woods, and there's like this kid that you saw back on Earth when Earth fell to the Reapers, and you're like following him running around in the woods, and it's literally just you running chasing the kid until the dream sequence is like, all right, you're done now, and back to the game. And the whole thing, I understand why it's there, but it did not accomplish it correctly. It tried to translate a dream sequence from a film into a video game, and I'm just like, you could have done this exact same thing with a cutscene and been significantly less annoying.
Yeah.
So, because
Right,
that's
like you the player still have to be involved because it's a game, and there's that sort of two-way street between you and what's happening on screen. And so like the dream sequence in a movie, you're like, oh, this is information that I couldn't have otherwise gotten in a very like surreal, visceral way. Whereas in a game, you're like, suddenly I have gone from being connected through the gameplay and mechanics to suddenly now I feel like I should be doing something or should be able to do something, but instead I'm just holding the W key to follow this kid through a simulated forest.
And to add insult to injury, I'm also running a lot slower than I would in not a dream sequence. So, you know.
Oh no.
Oh, that
Oh
sucks.
no.
Because they're trying to simulate the whole like you're running chasing after something in the dream, but you can't ever catch up, right? They're trying to simulate that, and it's like, or we could have done this as a cut scene.
Ugh.
Yeah, but anyway.
So
yeah, go ahead.
I've got an interesting, since we're like sort of making our way into the home stretch, I have an interesting question, I think, for Bri in particular, but it does sort of apply to all of us because we're all part of various streaming things. We've been talking a lot about like what we find enjoyable about games and what like we come to games for. And so I think what is there a difference between, Bri, games that you play on your own time versus games that you think are good to play on stream? What makes a game entertaining, and what makes a game entertaining to watch played?
Yeah, that is something I've been learning over time. But so far, I know like there's a lot like you can stream any game and someone will find it entertaining. But for me, I think what I've found is the most entertaining is games that actively make me like explore or like learn things or challenge me. I think that's just in general something that people like. If it's not something about exploring or like caring about a story, it's challenging me personally. So like you can kind of like even if I do something over and over and over and over and over again, once I get it, it'll be really rewarding. Like with Ori and the Blind Forest, or if it's like with Cat Quest, I think that's just been fun because it's so weird. Like it's sort of we kind of care about the story. In some we kind of care about the story, we kind of don't care about the story. It's just cute and fun. But also I think what makes it like interesting is the fact that like there's like it's full of cat puns. There's always something to joke about, and there's always something to like engage with through chat versus like engage with in the story. I play a lot of Animal Crossing off of stream recently. I played it once on stream and it was kind of fun. It was fun, and I think a lot of people enjoyed it, but I also think that it was sort of not my best stream just because I didn't know what to do, and it wasn't me figuring it out for the first time. I would just kind of jumped in and was like, I'm testing my thing. Let's watch me play Animal Crossing. I also think it's really important if you're wanting to play a game that's like not story based, like fully, if it's like kind of like a farming game or like a chores game sort of, to do it and not know anything about it going in, because the fun of watching people play games is sort of like seeing them learn about it for the first time, seeing them make the mistakes, seeing them see what you do in it. A lot of people, some people really hate watching people that are like noobs at games, but I think for me the most entertaining is watching people that have no idea what a game is figure it out. So if it's like a game like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley or something, since I've put so many hours into it already, I don't think it's super fun to watch me just know how to play it.
Yeah, and listening to you talk, that like sort of like there's almost two categories of games there, and one is games that offer like interactivity or entertainment value outside their mechanics. So like Cat Quest with a whole like just laundry list of cat puns and just like tooth-rottingly cute stuff happening on stream is like entertaining in its own way, because you're like, okay, how can they possibly top the latest cat pun? And then they do.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's like one of the categories of games that are there, because like they're entertaining not just because of the mechanical side of them, which is I think like a lot of the appeal of something like Monster Hunter, which is like very fun to play, but it's not super fun to watch somebody get knocked on their ass repeatedly by a big lizard.
Yeah.
And then the other kind is games that are fun to tell stories about. And it strikes me that like Neverwinter, I think, is a good example of that. Like one of the games I think that you play in particular, because like Neverwinter is not like super visually stunning or like interesting. It's kind of an old game, and like it's an old style like MMO where you're like grinding out a lot of functionally the same quest over and over and over again to move through the story. But it's hilarious when some idiot who shall remain nameless accidentally, interacts with something that spawns a bunch of things that you are way too weak to go up against.
Yeah,
and
sure.
So like that's it. Or like Borderlands and the murder bot lore that has sprung up around that on our Saturday streams, like that's absolutely nothing to do with Borderlands 2's actual game lore. It's just like a funny joke that we made and like double and triple and quadrupled down on.
Well, and I think Nico said something earlier which I think is important, which this is sort of what I've tried to articulate in our meetings sometimes, which says anything that elicits any sort of reaction out of the streamer is a good game to stream. And I think that absolutely, because one of the things that you can't take out of the idea of video games to stream is the human element of streaming, which is one of the reasons why streaming is very different than, for example, a Let's Play video on YouTube, right? Is the level of interactivity, the immediate feedback of being able to interact with somebody who is on stream playing a game. And so I think I agree with Nico that any game that elicits any sort of human response, any sort of human reaction out of the streamer is a good game to stream it. I absolutely agree. The trick is finding what those are. That's kind of like
Exactly.
And I think there's a certain amount of that we can attribute to like spontaneity of events in games. Like you were mentioning Neverwinter, how like your particular misadventures, John, is the kind of thing that doesn't really happen in Neverwinter. Like it does, but very, very rarely, and only like things don't surprise you in that game, right? Like there's just because everything is pretty much they happen in a specific way, and the quests are pretty much the same, and
Mhm.
it's that kind of thing. It's good for different reasons, but it's good for streaming for different reasons. But in general, another game that is like Neverwinter in that way, probably not the greatest for streaming.
Yeah. I'd say stream if I was to stream Neverwinter by myself, I don't think it'd be very fun.
Yeah, exactly. I could say the same about a lot of MMOs. I think most of them
Yeah.
even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I don't think it'd be very fun. I will get back to Ori and the Blind Forest. Both Nico and Matt have said how much they love it. I will get back to it. I'm just doing this out of spite. But like so starting a lot of things I only want to play games that I know that I will be interested in. I don't want to play a horror game. I don't want to play like a really huge fighting game or something like that. I only want to play games that I'm interested in, and sort of deciding whether or not I want to like if the gameplay is going to be interesting to watch on stream. Like with Beyond Blue, I don't know if it was super interesting. It was just big at the time, but I know that and when it comes to like eliciting reactions from a streamer, I love exploration games. So I know I react to them by myself. The reactions will be more heightened on stream. So there is that. Sometimes, like when it's more story game, I think it's a good balance to try to like make a game that you are focused on, but not too focused on that you're not watching chat. That's sort of what I've been thinking.
That's a good point. And I want to say, because this is related to what Hail of a Wolf said a second ago, which is good stream games depends on the audience and on the streamer. There are streamers that interact well with their audience, and some that focus on the game, and the audience is there to watch somebody be good and see how they play it, kind of like esports. And I think that's very true. It depends on the audience very much so. And that's one of the reasons why, like, I'm glad that you asked this question, John, because it gives us an opportunity to give a little bit of the behind the scenes of Rule of Lore in our video game content. Because one of the reasons that we haven't done very much video game content, first was technology barriers. That, let's be real, technology barriers was a huge thing when our streaming computer was
like a decade-old laptop.
That's charitable.
Mine's a decade-old laptop.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and so like that. So that was one thing. But then after that, our biggest hang up is figuring out what are the best games that are going to resonate with the audience we know we have. And that's sometimes it's narrative games, but I think narrative games have too much of a commitment behind them. Especially if there are these deep, sprawling kind of like stories, like how Mass Effect tends to be, and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
It's a bit too much of a commitment. You've got to be there, and if you miss anything, it's kind of like, what's going on, right? In some cases, or how did that one thing turn out? Well, if you weren't there, you don't know.
It's like going to watch your friends watch a movie, except that you showed up halfway through and you don't know what's going on in the movie, and your friends don't have time to explain it to you.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And so a lot of it's one of the reasons why some of how we have attempted to kind of cover that is by never having a single person on a video game stream, and having always at least two people on a video game stream is one of the ways that we've done that. Because then, not only is that at least double the people to interact with chat, it's also at least there's the interactivity in between the people on stream.
Yeah.
So what that means is the games that we have to choose are games that that allow multiplayer or co-op. They generally tend to be like sandboxy sort of games where we sort of do whatever we want to do in that moment, because it doesn't have any prior commitment of watching like a whole bunch of story stuff and knowing what's going on. So a lot of that is what has gone into our video game content, namely us not having it, because we've got to think about all of these things and figure out what we're gonna stream, what we want to kind of tie our boat to, so to speak. Right now we've kind of been jumping around a bunch of different games trying to see what works. And that's probably what we're going to be doing for the foreseeable future. And then at some point there will be some sort of poll sent around, and we'll let other people, like all of you out there, kind of give your input here. But for now, we're kind of just throwing a bunch of stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks, basically.
Yeah.
I really Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that even though I've been streaming almost for a year doing kind of what I've been doing, I'm still doing that. So like,
Yeah.
some like, I know I rarely drop a game because I know that a lot of my I have a lot of the same regulars and they want to come and watch me play games. But there's some games that I have dropped that I'm just not having fun playing on stream. So I'm like, sorry. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
I want to address what Nico said here, which is counterpoint. Your TTRPG streams are exactly that. If you miss a stream, there are 3 hours of story you have to catch up on, or you're pretty lost, and people are still here for them and catch up on the VODs daily. True. However, with video games, it's sort of a different thing, because it's one thing, I think there's a different level of engagement there. It's a different level of engagement there, because on the one hand, with the TTRPG streams, there is a story, but it doesn't really matter. With those stories, it doesn't matter that you're there live because there is no interactivity.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so
you
those
sort
can
of
be caught up on.
to be,
Yeah.
You sort of
Just
expect to
watching.
be passive.
Exactly. With video games, it's a different story, because with video games, it is interactive. And I know not everybody feels this way, because I know there's lots of people who will watch VODs of video game streams and non-interactive streams, or in interactive streams, and they'll watch the VODs of those. It's harder for me personally to do that kind of thing, which is one of the reasons why, unfortunately, as much as I loved watching Amy Dallin play Mass Effect, I stopped watching for a period of time because I couldn't make the streams, and then I couldn't come back to it because I was like, all right, well, I've missed so much at this point. Even though I know the story, that's not what I cared about. I cared about watching, like Matt said earlier, watching Amy sort of discover it and that kind of thing. So I think there is a good point that you were bringing up, Nico. However, it is also it's also more complicated than that, being a different medium, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. So like I think that the people that want to do that will go back and watch the streams, but in terms of thinking about content, you can't just think about the people that will come back and watch on the VOD, because one, Twitch doesn't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
Two,
right, yeah.
Like that's a big one. Just to point out, Twitch does not care about how many people come and watch you after you are live. That doesn't go to any of your numbers. That doesn't go to literally anything. Twitch only cares about what people come and watch you live, which is why I'm always like really focused on my numbers during my stream, because I want to know if Twitch is fucking up or whatever, because I would like to know what my numbers are so I know that Twitch will work and put me out on stream and stuff. That's sort of the behind the scenes, is that Twitch really does not care about the YouTube aspect of Twitch.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And I will say, I am always, personally, super jazzed whenever I see our numbers on our views on Twitch VODs go up. I love that. Love seeing that. Because what it tells me is that you the audience are willing to brave the absolutely terrible interface of watching videos on Twitch. Live stream is one thing. Watching videos, whew, buddy.
Yeah.
So the fact that people are willing to go through that trouble to watch our VODs is always a huge oh, okay, cool. That makes me happy. But it is true that when it comes to just the mercenary sheer numbers aspect, Twitch just does not care.
No.
But yeah.
Because with YouTube, it's this is how many views you got on your thing, and then it's that's great, but Twitch does not care. It's if you got 50, 100,000 views on your VOD, it does not care. You will not get partner, no matter how hard you try.
Yeah. And I feel you.
You will not get more emotes.
Hail of a Wolf, that is exactly my experience as well. Watch videos of VODs of interactive streams. It says, and it's weird. Sometimes I have to catch myself from trying to talk in chat. I sometimes turn off chat for video game VODs. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
For me, and I think this is where it comes kind of to the heart of it. And Freeman, you can back me up on this, because I know we've had these conversations since day one of Rule of Lore, which essentially one of the biggest aspects behind what we specifically are doing at Rule of Lore is building that interactive experience. like one of the things that always has attracted me to the medium is that real human connection that you get from this that you don't get from a YouTube video. And so for me, and for us at Rule of Lore, the thing that has always been the most important for us is that our content sparks that in whatever way it is possible to do. The TTRPG content, it has its moments. It's difficult, but the interaction there comes outside of the streams. Right, that's where that comes in, outside of the streams, talking about it, discussing Infinite Horizon and whatnot afterwards, the conversations around favorite characters, around favorite moments, those kinds of things. That
I
come
physically melt into a pile of goo every time I see Lemon Twist post new fan art.
Yeah,
Like...
that comes outside of that. But with everything else that we've tried to do has been to maximize the amount of interactivity that we can have on our streams, so as to compensate for the lack of interactivity that there is in the TTRPG streams. That's literally the whole reason Ramblemancy exists, by the way, is back when we were thinking about this, we were concerned about the idea that we weren't going to be able to interact that much with the audience, with chat on a TTRPG stream. That's where Ramblemancy came from. We were like, okay, well, what if we did this thing where we just like chat with people and interact with people? That is the whole reason that this very show that you were watching exists. So,
and it's a great show.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
But
I'm very glad you could join us for it.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad too. It's very fun. I still am hearing my roommates scream from the other room.
I hear them occasionally too.
it's very funny.
Another soccer dad has fallen into the
Another
lava.
soccer dad has fallen into the lava. If you want to laugh and you like Wipe Out, watch Flora's Lava on Netflix with a party. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anybody, let's see, hold on, let me just look at chat really fast, and I will call for some sort of final remarks if anybody has any here.
I'm gonna double check the little like it's more like half mad like delirium cave scratchings in the notes on my phone than it is actual notes, but
So like all my notes.
yeah, exactly.
All
My
of them.
my college notes were
Whatever.
so neat. I want to take a gander at chat too, but there was
I'll just, as we look at chat, I do have a few more things about like streaming games.
Sure,
I just
yeah, go for it.
remembered.
Oh,
So
yeah, go
as
for
you
it.
look at chat, another criteria of stream games on my stream so far, is that they are short or very open-ended form, like Neverwinter, because when you like, I know a lot of people also would like me to play longer games, but with the amount of time that I stream my games, because my channel is mostly focused on art, because that's my craft and that is where I get most of my numbers. I try to find games that are shorter, easy to like pack into 1 or 2 or 3 streams. And if it's like a long form game like Neverwinter, the only reason I do it only once a month is because I feel like if it's not once a month or not in smaller chunks, it'll get extremely boring because there's only so much you can do. So yeah.
You get the same kind of experience like Lucas is in this direction on stream, but like you'll get the same experience that Lucas had with Amy Dallon's Mass Effect streams after a while, right? Where you have people who are like, oh, she's still playing Dragon Age, or she's still playing Mass Effect, and I missed the last couple of weeks streams, and so like I'm out of the loop now.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed Odyssey with Anthropology Bri.
I mean, you're not wrong. That would be great. I would love to play Assassin's Creed on stream. I love Assassin's Creed.
I have
so
many
much.
things to rant about with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but I will not do it here, nor will I subject Freeman and John to around, like, what are we out now, 5 of my complaining about this?
4 or 5.
Yeah, something like that.
I've not heard this.
It's okay.
But I'm very interested.
And you know what? You won't tonight. So
Okay. We'll wait. I'll wait and hear about it.
I'm happy to rant about it at some time, but not now. Not right now.
Is it about gameplay or is it about story?
It's about gameplay. Gameplay.
Okay.
But
cool.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of both, because it's about quests but it's
Okay.
like about the game. Not important. We're not
The
getting
game
into
mechanics.
this. We're not
Got
getting
it.
into
Okay,
this.
I was just curious. I was just curious if you like had a problem with like the history side of it or like the actual game.
No,
side of
the
it.
history side
Okay.
didn't really bother me, mostly because there's literal minotaurs in that game. So anyway, we're
I mean, personally, love it.
yeah. So like
Accuracy, not great.
No,
Personally, great.
exactly. So
Love
I don't
it.
have a problem. I don't have the problem with the history side of it because
Yeah.
if I did, then I should maybe not be playing Assassin's Creed. But anyway, what was I gonna say? Oh, I think I was about to take us out here. But I will add and say that I would love to watch you play Assassin's Creed, Bri. So
Yeah.
It's definitely something I've been considering. If the only reason I don't play a lot of long form games is because I only stream games once a week. With people that like you stream games, that's the only thing you do.
right.
It's a lot easier, but just with how my life is structured right now, it's only feasible to do it once a week. I mean, I could, stream a game and not stream art on a different day, but people come to watch me do art because I am an artist and that's sort of my thing.
Right.
And the gaming is sort of like an addendum to that. So
Mhm.
I don't know. It's something I've been thinking about. Don't you worry, but try to figure out how it works.
All right. Well, with that, I think we have now come to the end of our show, which means that we still have about 10 minutes to kill before we actually go offline. So,
Right.
to
Point. I had one other thing to add.
well, I will use those remaining 10 minutes or so to talk a little bit about what's coming up in the next few weeks. First of all, this coming week, we are going to be missing a couple of players for Infinite Horizons. So, we will not, as I mentioned on Wednesday, as the possibility, is a definite thing now. We will not be having Infinite Horizon this coming Wednesday. So, while we are having a guest on our next episode of Infinite Horizon, it will not be this coming week. It will, in fact, be the following week, which is the... Hold on, is it the 15th? Is that Wednesday? Is that the 15th? Is that correct? Yes.
Look at our
It
calendar.
is. It is.
Yep.
Yes, it is the 15th.
The 15th. That's when we will be.
Oh, you guys probably have them.
That's when we will be back with Infinite Horizon. However, all of our other stuff will still happen, including Ramblemancy and a video game stream. John and I will be attempting to play co-op Portal 2.
Blind. I have
So
never
excited.
played.
Yeah.
Or like I'm going in
I'm
with
so
no
excited.
experience.
I watched Brian and Travis play it, and it was great. So I can't wait to see how you guys play.
So it's gonna be delightful chaos, and yeah. Let's see. Other things to note. The latest episode of Infinite Horizon went up on YouTube today. Late. It went kind of late, so it is up now. There were a bit of some issues with the the upload got interrupted last time. So I fixed it. It's there. It's on there. So there's that. Let's see. Am I missing big announcements?
I
don't think so.
think so. Before we shamelessly self-plug, Bri, do you want to? I mean, most people here probably know, but do you want to talk about who you are, what you do, and where we can find you?
Sure. For those of you that don't know who I am, or have only seen me on Rule of Lore and have not checked out any of my other content, I stream on Twitch too. My name, you can find me at Bri de Danann on Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch. Pretty much, if you just type in Bri de Danann, as it says on the screen, you will find me everywhere. Yeah, I stream on Twitch on Tuesdays and Saturdays. I stream art, and on Thursdays I stream games. Currently the time slots are from 4 to 7 p.m. Central Time because I live in the Midwest. So that's on my Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then 3 to 7 on Saturdays. Except for this Saturday, I'm streaming from 2 to 6, which is tomorrow because it's 4th of July, and I want to eat a 4th of July grilled dinner, not in the dusk where the mosquitoes are. So it's 1 hour earlier. But definitely come and check out. Tomorrow I'm going to be continuing to draw Clear Skies fan art because I need to finish this piece. I've been working on it for over a month. It's too detailed, and I'm just gonna keep doing it until it's done. So that's what we're doing tomorrow. And then Tuesdays are my fairy dust commission streams, or just commission streams in general, since I've reopened up my commissions. Oh, I'm also an artist. If you'd like to commission me, my commissions are open. If you want me to draw a boats or your character or whatever, I do that. But Tuesdays I do fairy dust commissions, where you can give me your channel points and I will draw something for you. My most common thing is quick doodles, which you ask me to do something within 20 minutes and I have to do it. And we see how far I get. And then Thursdays are my gaming streams, and next Thursday is I don't know yet, because I've done a new thing in July where I, instead of saying which games I'm gonna play and then changing it the day before, I'm not gonna announce it until I decide. So find out with me.
Cool.
Yeah.
I will also add that, John, well, you can. I was gonna look it up, but I know that if I pull it up, it's gonna wash me the fuck out. But I was gonna pull up their calendar, but I know that one of the Saturdays this month, Bri will be rejoining us for some more Borderlands too.
It is the 18th, so not next weekend, where Lucas and I will be playing Portal 2 together, but the weekend after that, of the 18th, it will be Lucas, Bri, and I back for some more Borderlands 2 Chaos, featuring the one, the only
Murderbot.
Hold
Yes.
on.
I have to say, that was the most fun watching the three of you play that game. I love that game more just because of you guys. Seriously, like, oh.
I'm so glad.
Murderbot fucks. It's very important that Murderbot fucks. You cannot take that away from him.
Yep.
I really do appreciate about our Murderbot summoning that anytime they join the party, like everybody just like starts singing. Like it's Murderbot the musical every time they show up.
Yeah.
And sometimes we get hit by trains.
Oh my god. That is still one of the funniest moments.
That is the funniest shit that has ever happened to me in a video game.
That's maybe one of the funniest things that's ever happened on a Rule of Lore stream. So, if you're confused about what we're talking about, you can find those clips right here on this very channel. It's going to be hard because Twitch's interface is going to make it extremely difficult for you to find them, but it can be done.
It can be done. I will say, put a stream with me and John on it. There will be chaos. There will be chaos.
Yeah.
I really do just enjoy streaming alongside you. It is very fun.
There will only be chaos.
I'm starting to wonder if maybe the common factor here is John, and that John is just chaos.
Yeah. As someone who plays, we all play games with John. We all know that that's true.
Oh god, Karaoke Night 69 says, "Lol, Twitch profanity filters, wench, ACAB, and not fuck. We truly live in a society." Yep, that is indeed a thing that happened.
I'm just Amethyst Catley, surprised Pikachu face. John, chaotic.
What? Who knew?
Yeah. All right. So, we've now reached the part of the evening where we shamelessly plug our own stuff. First and foremost, as Geek Out's pointed out earlier, we do have a Discord where you can continue this conversation or any others. Start them, end them. Don't end conversations. Well, not rudely anyway. You can keep track of all the things that are happening. That's probably the place where we can get the most up-to-date updates on the channel and things that are happening. Usually we go to Discord first. We have our Patreon where you can support us there, long term or short term, up to you. But in the meantime, you gain a variety of benefits, not the least of which is our tabletop tool chest, where we talk about all kinds of cool stuff and have little seeds for adventures, for items, it changes weekly, for your tabletop needs, for your writing needs, for whatever you want to use them for.
We have a different team of writers for that than we use for our streamed TTRPG content, and it's always so cool to me to see like all of the things that everybody
Mhm.
comes up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of where I get to show that I do write sometimes.
Yeah, Freeman gets to flex his creative writing muscles with our tabletop tool chest.
My they're not very muscular.
Let's see.
Well,
We
I
also have
mean-
a coffee where you can sort of drop a more low commitment support if you would like. It is every little bit helps us out, and I mean that in the most literal sense. Like there are because of Patreon support from Patreon and Coffee, there are some of our costs that we don't have to worry about, some of our monthly costs that we just straight up don't have to worry about. So thank you to everybody who has donated and who has supported us on Patreon. Huge help, huge help. We let's see. I think Geek Outs has posted a
That's-
clip of John's chaos taking place.
Yeah, that was the clip when John exploded himself off a roof.
Yep, one of
Yep.
the many times.
Listen, in my defense, it said push V to smash, and we were playing Borderlands. So what would you do? You push V to smash, man.
And then you explode.
Um,
I was viciously baited.
as for our content, if you appreciate the content that you saw here tonight, you can keep up with some of our other content, like Infinite Horizon, through our YouTube channel, as well as in podcast form, which are pretty easy to find. Especially on podcast, it's the root site is Anchor, but you can pretty much find it on whatever podcasting platform you prefer. A variety of them, and if it's not there on your favorite, then you can use the RSS feed, and you're just gonna get it in there. And let's see, did I miss something? I feel like I missed something. Oh, merch.
Oh yes, I did.
You can Rule of Lore has merch. We have our Rule of Lore merch, which has actually I can literally just show you. Thank you, Ramblemancy. So you can get you can get the standard Rule of Lore tee. We have a hoodie, which is cool. We have, of course, Henry's favorite, the mug, and my personal favorite, the Infinite Horizon tee, which I believe most of the Rule of Lore team now have theirs.
Mine is
think
on
so.
its way.
Yes.
Nice.
So
Mine's just over there somewhere.
yeah. So you can do that and more. Actually, mostly it's just that. Actually, just that on the merch site. Anyway, that's I think everything. So, thank you everybody for coming, for hanging out with us. Bri, thank you for coming and having this chat with us. Always good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Is there anybody we can raid right now? I wasn't really.
Yeah.
I hadn't really been paying attention.
That's a good point.
Vanna's playing Dead by Daylight, which Caleb Wolf was
That's
was
right.
talking about earlier in the
Yeah.
stream. So that might be a good.
That kind of seems fitting that we raid a video game stream
Mhm.
After talking about video
after talking
games
about
all
video
night.
games for like an hour and a half. Yeah.
Poetic.
Hold up. Let me. Oh, Vanna and
playing
Nega
it.
Oryx are playing. Cool. Okay.
I thought I'd play us out, but I came on stage a little too soon.
Yeah, I think. Oh man, Rachel Seeley is also streaming. Playing Stardew
yeah,
Valley.
yeah.
What do you guys think? Vanna or Rachel Seeley?
I don't think we've ever raided Rachel before. I think that'd be fun.
I don't think she's usually streaming when we are able to raid. So yeah, I see that. Yeah, Saving Throw Show is streaming as well. Let's see. Interesting. Okay. All right. Felicia Day is doing Animal Crossing. I'm kind of in. I think we can stream. We can raid Rachel. I think that's a good one. So let's get that happening. So hold on, let me get that ready.
Prepare your dice in chat.
All right, let me just make sure I have that correct. Yeah, cool. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us, for chatting with us about video games. We will see you the next time that we'll be here. Will be actually a week from now on Friday for Ramblemancy. So it'll be a bit. But actually, we may try to do something on Wednesday anyway, even though it's not Infinite Horizon. We may try to do something anyway. We'll let you know. Yet another reason to join the Discord if you're not there already. So we'll see you next time you decide to come roll with us. All right, everybody. Let's go raid Rachel. Oh, it's not letting me do it. 1 second.
Uh-oh.
Let's try that again.
We've had a lot
I
of
see what I
pride
did
emotes
wrong.
in the
I
chat,
see what I
and
did.
appreciate it.
All right.
All the pride emotes.
All right, we're going.
There we go.
All right, everybody. See you soon.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.